Welcome to Audit the Audit, where we sort out the who and what and the right and wrong of police interactions. This episode covers the Fourth Amendment, carrying concealed weapons, and firearms, and is brought to us by Cop Watch's channel. Be sure to check out the description below and give them the credit that they deserve. Before we dive into the interaction, I want to give a big thanks to the sponsor of this episode, Fume. We all have bad habits, and if you're anything like me, things will be going great for a while, but then as soon as life gets stressful, I fall back into my bad habits for comfort. What if I told you that there's a better alternative that helps you kick your bad habit in an enjoyable, guilt-free way? Fume is an award-winning flavored air device that fills the void ditching a bad habit can leave and still gives you something to reach for in stressful times. It's a habit you're free to enjoy and makes replacing your bad habit easy. Your Fume comes with an adjustable airflow dial and is designed with movable parts and magnets for fidgeting, giving your fingers a lot to do, which is helpful for de-stressing while breaking your habit. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air, and instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses all natural, delicious flavors. Flavored air isn't like vaping. If vapor was compared to sticky soda, Fume cores are closer to herbal teas. Not only is your Fume the perfect device to keep your hands busy and your mind occupied, but they also offer a ton of different flavor options to fit any taste. Fume has served over 150,000 customers, and you can be the next success story. For a limited time, use my code AUDIT to get 10% off a journey pack. Head to tryfume.com, that's tryfum.com, and use code AUDIT or scan the QR code on screen to save 10% off your order today. Thanks again to Fume for sponsoring today's episode. On March 23, 2021, Sergeant Keith Vidler of the Orange County Sheriff's Office observed serial police impersonator Jeremy DeWitt riding on a motorcycle with what appeared to be a firearm holstered on his waistband in Orange County, Florida. Mr. DeWitt has a long criminal history, including multiple arrests for impersonating a police officer while operating his so-called funeral procession escort business, Metro State Special Services, and is a convicted felon and registered sex offender. Sergeant Vidler initiated a traffic stop on Mr. DeWitt and the individual who was riding with him, and the interaction that followed was captured on body camera.
Don't reach for that firearm. Walk away from your bike. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. Go down to your knees. Do not reach for that firearm. Do not reach for that firearm. Go down to your knees. Go down to your stomach. Do not reach for that firearm. Go down to your stomach now. Do not reach for that firearm. Do not reach for that firearm. You hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Go ahead and secure him. What? He got the firearm on his side. You're being secure because you're openly carrying a firearm.
What?
You're openly carrying a firearm.
I'm carrying a pepper ball. You already know that.
I do not know that. That is a firearm. That is a firearm right now.
After Sergeant Vidler points his firearm at Mr. DeWitt and orders him to the ground at gunpoint while another officer places Mr. DeWitt in handcuffs, Sergeant Vidler explains that Mr. DeWitt is being quote-unquote secured because he is openly carrying a firearm. Now, while Mr. DeWitt was actually carrying an unloaded pepper ball, which we will discuss in further detail later in this episode, the device was painted to resemble a legitimate firearm. With limited exceptions, it is unlawful under Section 790.053 of the Florida statutes, quote, for any person to openly carry on or about his or her person any firearm or electric weapon or device. As the 4th District Court of Appeals of Florida determined in the 2015 case of Norman versus State, which was later affirmed by the Supreme Court of Florida, holstered weapons are considered to be openly carried, despite the fact that the firearm itself is not visible when it is in a holster. In explaining this decision, the court noted that, quote, a holster alone cannot conceal a firearm. Conceal means to hide something or someone from sight or to keep something secret. Defendant's holstered weapon was in plain view. Therefore, because it appeared that Mr. DeWitt was openly carrying a holstered firearm in violation of this statute, it is likely that a court would find that Sergeant Vidler had the reasonable suspicion necessary under the Fourth Amendment to detain Mr. DeWitt. Since the Supreme Court has held that officers can still have reasonable suspicion when they are reasonably mistaken about the facts of a situation. Additionally, it is probable that a court would find that that the officers did not exceed their constitutional authority by pointing a firearm at Mr. DeWitt and securing him in handcuffs. In the 2021 case of Florida Carry Inc. versus City of Miami Beach, the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Florida held that officers did not violate the Fourth Amendment by approaching a group of individuals who were openly carrying firearms with drawn weapons and disarming and handcuffing the armed citizens. As officers are typically authorized to take these kinds of actions for their safety, it is likely that a court would find that the Orange County deputies' actions were constitutionally justified, at least up to this point of the interaction.
You know it's pepper ball.
It's a firearm. I do not know it's a pepper ball. That looks like a regular firearm.
You know it's a pepper ball. He even told you in the email that it's a pepper ball.
Stay with him. You have anything on you? Roll on your side. All right, go ahead and stand up. You can stay at your bike.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Leave my camera alone, bro.
Hear me?
Leave my camera
No,
alone.
you're not going to talk to me. Okay, I dictate this traffic stop, not you. You understand me?
What are you yanking my helmet off?
I'm trying to take your helmet off.
What are you yanking my helmet
I'm
off?
trying to identify you because I can't see
You're
you.
trying to identify me?
Go ahead and sit up. Stay right there.
What are you doing?
What is this?
You
It
know
is a
what
fire. No, I do not.
You know it's a pepper ball. Stop it, man.
All right, I'm going to
Stop
take
it
it up. All right, Jeremy, you're being arrested for carrying a concealed weapon.
Concealed? It was in plain view.
That's not plain view. That's concealed. That holster is
How
concealed.
What are you talking about? It's in plain view. Florida statute 9-7. What are you talking about? Give me a lieutenant. It was in plain view. It's in plain view. How am I being arrested?
Call for a cage car.
After initially claiming that he stopped Mr. DeWitt for openly carrying a firearm, Sergeant Vidler tells Mr. DeWitt that he is under arrest for carrying a concealed weapon. Now, according to Section 790.001 of the Florida statutes, a firearm or weapon is considered to be quote-unquote concealed if it is carried on or about a person in such a manner as to conceal it from the ordinary sight of another person. As we discussed earlier in this episode, because Mr. DeWitt's holstered pepper ball was clearly visible to Sergeant Vidler, a court would almost certainly find that Mr. DeWitt was carrying the pepper ball openly, and that it was not concealed for the purposes of this statute. Now, this distinction is essential for several reasons. First, at the time of this encounter, Section 790.01 of the Florida statutes prohibited citizens who had not received a state license from carrying concealed weapons or concealed firearms on or about their persons. As a convicted felon, Mr. DeWitt would not be legally permitted to obtain a concealed carry license under Section 790.06 of the Florida statutes, which prohibits individuals with felony convictions from obtaining licenses. In fact, under both state and federal law, Florida citizens who have been convicted of felonies cannot even possess firearms. Section 922 of Title 18 of the U.S. Code prohibits an individual who has been convicted of a crime punishable by imprisonment for a term exceeding 1 year from possessing firearms or ammunition. Likewise, Section 790.23 of the Florida statute states that, quote, "It is unlawful for any person to own or to have in his or her care, custody, possession, or control any firearm, ammunition, or electric weapon or device, or to carry a concealed weapon, including a tear gas gun or chemical weapon or device, if that person has been convicted of a felony." Now, as we will explore in further detail later in this episode, it is highly unlikely that the pepper ball would be classified as a firearm, but it could potentially be considered a weapon under Florida law. Therefore, since Mr. DeWitt has been previously convicted of a felony, it would be illegal for him to carry a concealed weapon, whereas it would not be unlawful for him to carry a weapon other than a firearm or electric weapon or device openly. Interestingly, on April 3rd, 2023, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed House Bill 543, which amended Section 790.01 to allow some Florida citizens to carry concealed weapons without obtaining a license. However, the new version of the statute states that, quote, "A person is authorized to carry a concealed weapon or concealed firearm if he or she is licensed or is not licensed under but otherwise satisfies the criteria for receiving and maintaining such a license." Although House Bill 543 did eliminate the requirement that individuals demonstrate competence with a firearm in order to be permitted to concealed carry without a license, it did not do away with the prohibition against concealed carry by citizens with felony convictions. Accordingly, even under the new Florida concealed carry law, a convicted felon such as Mr. DeWitt would not be able to lawfully carry a concealed weapon.
Okay.
Give me a lieutenant.
Go ahead and stand up, Jeremy.
Give me a lieutenant. Give me a
Got him.
lieutenant.
Jeremy, be quiet.
It was in plain view.
Have him call for a record for the bike. Sit down, Jeremy.
He wasn't talking.
Sit
to
down.
me.
No, I'm telling you to sit down. Go ahead and sit down. On the ground. On the ground until we get a cage car.
I don't want you falling back.
It's falling off over the side.
Sergeant, let me get a lieutenant.
You're not getting a lieutenant. You're going to be quiet. You're going to be quiet.
Why am I having to? Why is 970 not valid now? Why is Stephen Casey Miller email not valid now? I don't understand. We're not. It was in plain view.
Jeremy, listen to me.
Legally, he carried it.
Jeremy,
You
listen
guys
to me.
even told us that.
right.
Sergeant.
Listen, you're free to go. I don't have anything on you. You're free to go.
Take my phone off my bike right there.
Okay, no, but you're free to
Take
go.
my phone.
No.
Joe, hey, that's my. What's going on? I wasn't open carrying.
Sit down! Sit down and be quiet!
Where's your
Sit down!
lieutenant?
Jeremy, I'm going to explain this to you right now, and I want you to listen up, and I want you to stop running your mouth.
Okay.
All right, you sound like a little child out here running
No,
your mouth.
it's
Okay,
not that
listen
you're
to me.
arresting me for
Jeremy,
something.
listen to me. I'm
All
going to
right.
tell it to you.
Go ahead, Sergeant.
Okay? You're being arrested for carrying a concealed weapon. That's what you're being charged with. When we get off the roadside, I'm not going to argue with you here on the roadside. This isn't the place or time to argue with.
But I'm not-
Listen to me. When we're done here, I'm going to take you back to the station, and then we'll talk about it. But I'm not going to argue with you up here on I-4. As soon as the car gets here to put you in the car, and the record gets here, we'll go talk,
Yeah,
okay?
you-
All right, that's it.
hold up.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Not him again.
Yep.
All right, what's he need?
What I'm going to do is I'm going to put him in your car. We're probably going to go to our office for an interview.
Okay.
Sergeant, why am I being arrested for open carrying?
No, it's locked. Jeremy, I already spoke to you, and I told you what was going to happen. I told you what was going to happen, and that's what's going to happen. I'm going to leave this in your bike, because you're not going to be able to take this to the jail.
That's fine.
Okay.
Plain view.
All right, we're ready. Please, wallet. Okay, thanks. Appreciate it. Here's the thing, too. My camera's going. When you get him in the car, do not discuss anything with him. Don't talk to him. Okay?
How is that concealed? Sergeant, how is that concealed?
Okay, Jeremy, we're going to go ahead and stand up and go back to the car. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
So, Sergeant, how is it concealed
Go
if
back
I
here.
wasn't wearing a jacket and you rode up next to me and you clearly saw it?
I'm gonna search for it. Okay. Right here. Put your leg out.
You're destroying my business by doing what you're doing, and I didn't do anything illegal today. I'm not wearing anything over my belt. I'm not hiding anything. You rode up next to me, and you clearly saw it on my hip. So how is that carrying a concealed weapon? It's not even a weapon. It's for less lethal purposes, self-defense purposes. How is that illegal? Sergeant, I'm asking you a question. You have enough cars here to protect us from the accident. So explain that to me.
Mr. DeWitt argues that his pepper ball is not a weapon because it is for quote-unquote less lethal and quote-unquote self-defense purposes. A pepper ball is an air-powered launcher that shoots pepper spray-filled projectiles. Upon impact, the projectiles burst open and release a cloud of pepper irritant. As such, it is highly improbable that a court would conclude that the pepper ball could be considered a firearm, which section 790.001 of the Florida statutes defines as, quote, any weapon which will expel a projectile by the action of an explosive. Because pepper balls are powered by compressed CO2 or nitrogen cartridges and not propellants that cause explosions, they would not meet the state's legal definition of a firearm, despite the fact that they do expel projectiles. However, it is less clear whether a pepper ball would be considered a concealed weapon. Section 790.001 defines a concealed weapon as, quote, any dirk, metallic knuckles, billy, tear gas gun, chemical weapon or device, or other deadly weapon carried on or about a person in such a manner as to conceal the weapon from the ordinary sight of another person. The statute also defines a chemical weapon or device as, quote, any weapon of such nature, except a device known as a self-defense chemical spray. Self-defense chemical spray means a device carried solely for purposes of lawful self-defense that is compact in size, designed to be carried on or about the person, and contains not more than 2 ounces of chemical. Now, since pepper balls shoot chemical-filled projectiles and not a spray of chemicals, it is certainly possible that a court would determine that the pepper ball constituted a chemical weapon or device that could not be worn by Mr. DeWitt in a concealed manner. However, as Mr. DeWitt was openly carrying the pepper ball, and the open carry statute only applies to firearms or electric weapons or devices, it is likely that a court would conclude that Mr. DeWitt did not violate the law in carrying his pepper ball, even if it qualified as a chemical weapon.
If it's in plain view, when exactly was it concealed? You're towing my bike and you're putting me into custody for a concealed weapon when it was in plain view. And it wasn't a weapon, it's a self-defense pepper ball. And your lawyers at your sheriff's office said it wasn't illegal. Go ahead and get in. Slide in, watch your knee. There you go. Oh, now you want to be nice?
Just hang tight here until the tow truck. Once I get the bike loaded, we'll go back to the motor office at second floor.
Got it. Okay.
Mr. DeWitt was booked into the Orange County Jail on a $5,000 bond. He was then subjected to a 2-hour interview, during which he admitted he did not intend to use the pepper ball for personal protection, but rather to make it seem like he was carrying an actual firearm to gain compliance from citizens he approached. However, he was released once the sheriff's office determined that the pepper ball did not constitute a concealed weapon under Florida law, and no criminal charges were ever filed. After Mr. DeWitt's arrest, the Orange County Sheriff's Office launched an investigation into the traffic stop and concluded that Sergeant Vidler purposely targeted Mr. DeWitt during this traffic stop after a 2019 racketeering investigation into Mr. DeWitt's alleged criminal activities was shut down. The investigation also determined that because Mr. DeWitt was carrying the pepper ball in plain view, Sergeant Vidler should have released Mr. DeWitt rather than arrested him. As a result of this investigation, Sergeant Vidler's employment was terminated on October 4th, 2021. However, on April 1st, 2022, former Sergeant Vidler filed a lawsuit against John W. Mina in his official capacity as Orange County Sheriff for violating Florida's Public Sector Whistleblower Act. The lawsuit contends that Sergeant Vidler had probable cause to arrest Mr. DeWitt for carrying a concealed weapon, and claims that he was actually terminated in retaliation for his outspoken criticism regarding the racketeering investigation into Mr. DeWitt being dropped, rather than any misconduct during this encounter. As of the date of writing this episode, this lawsuit is still pending. While Mr. DeWitt did not face any criminal charges as a result of this arrest, he shortly found himself in more legal trouble, and on January 19, 2023, Mr. DeWitt was arrested in Orange County and charged with a total of 9 felonies involving an alleged insurance fraud scheme and failing to comply with sex offender registration requirements. As of the date of writing this episode, these charges are still pending, with a trial scheduled for June 17, 2024. Mr. DeWitt is also facing more than a dozen felony charges in Osceola County, Florida, for various sex offender registration violations, and on March 27, 2024, he was charged in federal court with 2 counts of tax fraud. As of the date of writing this episode, all of these charges are still pending. Overall, Sergeant Vidler gets an F for arresting Mr. DeWitt without any reasonable basis for doing so, maintaining a hostile and aggressive demeanor throughout the encounter, and repeatedly ignoring Mr. DeWitt's reasonable questions about why he was being arrested. Now, while the initial stop was likely justified, and Sergeant Vidler seemed to honestly believe that Mr. DeWitt may have been carrying a firearm when he first pulled him over, he should have immediately released Mr. DeWitt once he discovered it was a pepper ball. Instead, Sergeant Vidler changed his story to attempt to justify an arrest while accounting for this new fact. When Mr. DeWitt was first detained, Sergeant Vidler claimed that he was openly carrying a firearm.
You're being secure because you're openly carrying a firearm.
However, once he realized that Mr. DeWitt was only carrying a pepper ball, which is not considered to be a firearm under Florida law, but could potentially qualify as a weapon, Sergeant Vidler changed his story and told Mr. DeWitt that he was under arrest for carrying a concealed weapon.
All right, Jeremy, you're being arrested for carrying a concealed weapon.
Concealed? It was in plain view.
That's not plain view. That's concealed. That holster's concealed.
What are you talking about? How the are you? What are you talking about? It's in plain view.
This change in word choice seemed to be intentional, as Florida law only prohibits the open carrying of firearms and electric weapons, which would not include a pepper ball, while forbidding the concealed carrying of weapons. While Sergeant Vidler was certainly permitted to consider what he knew about Mr. DeWitt in making decisions during the encounter, he appeared to let his biases get the better of him, and ultimately illegally arrested Mr. DeWitt for carrying a concealed pepper ball when he seemed to know it was actually openly carried, as the open carrying was the initial basis for the stop. Based only on his conduct during the traffic stop, Mr. DeWitt gets an A-, because while he could have exercised his right to remain silent more effectively and raised his voice to the officers on multiple occasions, he remained within his First Amendment rights throughout the encounter and complied with the officer's orders while voicing his valid objections to his arrest. However, it is important to note that this grade is exclusively an evaluation of how Mr. Witt behaved during this traffic stop, and it is not a reflection of my overall opinion of Mr. DeWitt and his activities, including the wearing of the pepper ball in the first place. While it is likely that a court would find that Mr. DeWitt's carrying of the pepper ball was legal, the fact that he admitted that he wore it to obtain compliance from citizens he encountered is more than troubling, as are the many other allegations and past criminal convictions against Mr. DeWitt. However, Mr. DeWitt's history of criminal activity does not nullify the unconstitutional nature of Sergeant Vidler's conduct, and I believe that in this encounter, Mr. DeWitt was wrongfully arrested. Let us know if there is an interaction or legal topic you would like us to discuss in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out my second channel for even more police interaction content.